Hello, everyone, and welcome in another English ones. Today we have a special guest, Martin Winston. Hello,
Hey, how you doing?
the condition coach.
Yes.
Most people know you by this name because this is the Instagram era, so
That's all
no
right,
one knows you by your name anymore.
yeah. And it's weird that I always find that when I see people, I end up sometimes calling them by their Instagram name more so than their
Yeah,
actual name. And it's the world that we live in now. It's quite funny.
yeah, it is. But I think that's probably sometimes better because you are almost like an undercover.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Stay sort of hidden, stay stealth mode.
Yeah, for people who are living under the rock, you are basically a UK coach, mostly known by coaching names like, for example, the Brick. So yeah, the man that is let's say it again. Most people know you because you are a coach, but you've competing yourself
Yeah.
back in the days. So tell us briefly about your past.
So my sort of history in bodybuilding sort of stemmed from, pretty much how all our generate from sort of my generation, just getting in the gym, you're training with your friends, and there was never really sort of main competitions around. There was the odd one or two local shows here and there, but I got into the gym because I enjoyed training. I wanted to change the way that I looked, to go out on a Saturday night, and that was,
Yeah,
18, 19 years old. Enjoyed the training process, then started tightening up the diet, started liking what I see, and after a few years, a friend of mine, he was like, "Why don't you think about competing? You've got a good shape, you diet well, you come in, you do all this effort for yourself, and with no end reward sort of thing. You go on holiday, you showcase it, and that's it. But taking it to stage is that next level." And I was like, you know what, let's give it a go. I competed at my local show, first timers. I think I come second. And then it just went on through the sort of UK federations, the UK BFF and NABA, you know, federations that aren't really sort of present anymore in the UK, but they were the old school go-tos in the UK. I competed for 11 years. I sort of had a bit of a gap when I met my wife. We had a bit of a honeymoon period where we both didn't compete for a while. I actually met my wife on prep in 2017, and we both won the one of the regional shows. Both won our classes, so that was pretty cool. Then when we took a little bit of a gap, and then we came back. I competed with Two Bros, the UK
yeah.
uh, sort of affiliated NPC regional um, qualifications. Did the Ben Weeder, won a couple of classes, was in the overall, and for me, that was enough. At that point, coaching had sort of shot up quite dramatically, and I quit my job, and this was something that I was doing full time at the time of actually competing. I was going to go one more time. I was actually going to go to the Amateur Olympia in Vegas a couple of years back, and I think it was about 8 weeks out. But I think I was in Prague when I called it because I was over there with a couple of athletes, and I was just so drained because of the sleepless nights, early morning check-ins, consistent, just doing what I'm doing. Diet wasn't a problem. It was more so the fatigue that was hitting in that allowed me not to train to my full capacity, not to be able to do my cardio to full capacity. And I always say to guys, you need to be 100% if you're in a prep. And I wasn't
Yeah.
100%. And I was like, you know what? I've got too much love for what I do right now. I'm on this trajectory. If I don't commit to this now, I may not be where I am today. Does that make sense? So for me, it's just like, that's it. Done competing and then just continue doing what I'm doing and managed to build a fantastic team since then.
Statystyki podpowiadają mi, że duża część osób oglądających ten kanał wciąż go nie subskrybuje. Dlatego jeżeli należysz do tego grona, zasubskrybuj już teraz oraz wpadaj na naszego Discorda. Link znajdziesz w opisie tego filmu. Zapraszam Cię również do wspierania ruchu Zapierdalać Trzeba poprzez zakupywanie merchu oraz szerowanie, udostępnianie i lajkowanie. Wielkie dzięki i wracamy do materiału.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, okay, so as since you're a coach full time right now, and a pretty good one, to be honest, it's you're not maybe known as like for example, Stefan Kinsel yet,
No.
but Stefan 2 years ago probably no one knows about him. So I think your days may come sooner than we everyone thinks.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your approach to coaching, just because
Mhm.
there's a lot of coaches that have a different, like I, let's call it set of tools,
Mhm.
but the outcome is always pretty much the same. So you wanted to pick your athletes at like the best as is possible.
Mhm.
This is something that's very tricky for some people because they are thinking that there's only one way to do that, and there's many ways to skin a cat, like they like to says. So I would like to know. What's your approach when it comes to the off season. So basically, I'm gonna create a scenario for you just to be in a better position to explain the difference, because if we gonna speak in general, some people thinks that it could be used for a
Yeah.
48-kilo woman and 125-kilo guys, and it's not. So let's say that you have a competitor that is 102 kilos, so he previously competes in a heavyweights division, and he wanted to go to the super heavyweights, so the open division.
Yeah.
So let's says he is after his competition prep, so he's lean, his lab works are great, so there's no consideration about his health at any point, and he just signed with you. So how do you set up his training during the off season if you know that he has to bring everything basically, because he's balanced, he has no weak areas. So let's says that you wanted to bring everything. Did you focus more on the volume training, more intensity, or you split into the cycles during the whole season? So, for example, there going to be a period of low volume, high intensity, and then the period of high intensity, low volume. How do you like to set up the training for that guy?
I'm pretty old school in the way that I set up my training. There's a lot of new school methods that are now apparent, and everybody sort of seems to see on Instagram. I'm very old school, high volume, high intensity. Get the fuck in the gym, train hard, and get out. That's my sort of like the methodology. But you have to break that down. Okay, someone like that who's very balanced, very easily you can set up a bro split quite simply. Single muscle group, 5 days a week, and even run it as a 2 day on, 1 day off rotation, just ensuring that we've got some extra recovery because obviously it's post prep, so we have to take that into consideration. Everybody wants to go full guns blazing after after a show.
Yeah,
Once they've got the green lights from the lab work, everybody's like, let's go off season. But we do have to respect the fact that obviously you're going to be introducing androgens. The body's strengths want to do this, but your body's probably going to go at that level. So again, just responding to each individual, I guess, because everybody does have their own recovery rate, and you want to limit injuries at that time. Now, as you go from that point, where what I would probably do is set up a training plan, potentially a bro split at that point, and be like, right, okay, we've got 2 or 3 working sets designed for each exercise. For maybe the first week, 2, 3 weeks, I'm like, okay, remove one of those working sets. So total volume then is reduced just as we're coming off the blocks. Okay, because we have to respect the fact again that the body's tendons, joints, etc., are probably not going to play ball in regards to how quickly your strength is going to elevate. So we have to manage that at the moment in time. So it's very simple: reduce volume, allow the recovery. Once the body starts to feel good and that rate of recovery starts to improve as you're going through that window, you can then escalate the training volume up. Intensity is still going to be there. I still like to ensure that intensity is throughout the training, but total volume is probably a little bit less at the start. And then as the sort of curve starts to increase, we can start to increase that. But then as we get into the back end, maybe of that first push phase, we may then revert back to where we were at the start. Does that make sense again? Because potentially extra additional body weight has been gained, a little bit of lethargicness has potentially come into play because of additional body weight, and performance is getting you get more out of the performance in a lesser volume. So it's just, again, man, I've got guys that will pretty much run full steam from point one of week one to point 16 or 20 of that phase, and they can handle it. Their recovery rate can handle it. Again, everybody is different. I've got guys that will have to then break in a technical deload week or something, which I tend to just tell them to stay out the gym, let their body recover, and we go again. So a lot of everything that we sort of talk about is very individual based. As we know, there's no one shoe fits all, but there is I guess a theory in regards to managing the training to ensure that we can make the most progression. And for me, managing it at the early point as we come out of that prep scenario, making sure that we're not sort of overloading the body too much, we're not smashing the CNS too quickly, because that's just going to drop off very, very soon through that period. As long as we can get that trajectory and manage the volume, I say, and then see the response. If we then see a response in regards to, right, okay, one muscle group potentially is gaining more traction and seeing more development, where, okay, we can pull some volume from that, and then maybe assess the physique and be like, okay, we can shift that volume into another muscle group. That bro split then gets adapted, so then it becomes almost like a hybrid bro split, because again, it's making sure that the individual's getting what they need to push through that phase. Then as we go through the next growth phase, because we're sort of shifting from heavyweight to super, we need to sort of make sure that everything's sort of moving forward. Rate of trajectory through the first growth phase, as we know, is pretty steep. As we go into the second phase, that rate of trajectory drops down, and then the body starts to it can start to fight back a little bit. So then again, it's right, do we look at the overall split at that point to then maybe run something a little bit more designed for where that athlete is at that moment in time? If they're golden and we can continue doing what we're doing and seeing the progress that we're seeing, then we keep it the same. If it's not broke, we don't fix it, right? So then it's, again, just looking at the needs analysis of the individual at the moment in time and breaking it down. The way that I do it, and you'll see quite a lot, especially UK coaches, they actually map out the phasing. Quite a lot of European coaches, they sort of just tend to sort of go, well, this is where we are right now, just keep going, going, now we'll drop down. But for me, mapping out the actual plan moving forward, we may not have a show date in mind, but if we can figure out the fact that we can get maybe 2 or 3 growth phases in before you're next on stage, we can then really sort of focus on, right, okay, first phase is right, this training split, go into a health phase, we analyze where we are, we look at not just the physique, but how the physique is responding, how the recovery rate is, what your strength, where your strength is, and then do we need to adjust that training split moving forward into the next phase? So again, very specific to every individual.
Yeah, for most of the listeners, probably they are in shock right now because you are from UK and there's some sort of even a term created, UK style of training. So most of the UK people are training in a low volume, high intensity fashion, like a top back off set, and you
Yeah.
switch the exercise. So for probably for most listeners, they are in shock that you are training in the normal bodybuilding fashion. It's how it's called in my book.
And the thing is, though, there's no right or wrong way to train. And I always say that, everybody's got their own way. One of the main things for me is what I'll do is I'll speak to an individual and I'll be like, right, how do you like to train? Because we know the reason why we got into this is because we like training. If we can ensure that the athlete enjoys the training. So there may be some little bit of back and forth of, right, okay, I don't like low volume, but potentially we're going to need it, but we're going to sort of like give it a little bit of a hybrid mix up so you can still enjoy it, but get out what we need to from your physique. As long as enjoyment is there whilst you're training, application is going to be 100%. With application, what you're going to see is progression. If you give someone a plan and they're like, mate, I'm really not getting on with this, I don't enjoy it, you know that they're going into the gym and they're probably not putting 100% into it. So it's you're almost defeating the object before you're even getting going. So again, back and forth with an athlete just to get a good understanding of how they enjoy training, not like how they approach it as such, because you can apply that, but so much how they enjoy it, and then you can sort of put a little bit of your spin on it to make sure that they're making the progression that they need to see at the end of the day.
Obviously, obviously. So what about the off-season diet? Do you like to keep a guy like for example, let's say it's me, for
Yeah.
like me, so 102 kilo, I'm lean, I'm going to off-season. Do you like to keep me lean, or you like to put me on a full-blown like a mass mode, let's say? Because
So
we sorry that I interrupt you, because we are basically switching to another division. So in this situation, probably you like to make it a little bit different in the like for guys who are already there.
yeah. So like everybody has an off-season look. My off-season look was poor. No matter how tight I try to keep it myself personally, I do have clients like that, and you probably see that as well. Um, Everybody's looking at off-season is different. Comparison is the thief of joy. I always say this because some guys that can stay very lean in an off-season, they can push and stay lean, but they're probably the guys at a higher level. And guys like yourself, we could stay reasonably lean. It's more so the guys of a newbie sort of level that I always say, look, you're gonna have to force yourself into a very uncomfortable position to put new tissue on. You would have gathered momentum over the last few years, good few years of just building muscle tissue. You're gonna stay lean. Your body is responsive. So we know that we can push that. By pushing too aggressively, we're probably gonna see some fight back in regards to GI issues, lethargicness. So again, is that going to be uh, more productive than keeping things steady and keeping things tight? Again, breaking it down, it reverts back to everybody's different. Everybody has a tolerance level to a certain degree. But yeah, I'm someone who certainly feel that you have to almost be uncomfortable. You have to get uncomfortable to be in a position where you're going to be pushing that body to new limits. Once you're there, then again you can reassess and you can probably be in a position where you don't have to do that again. But I always say that someone's always going to have that one-off season where they get a little bit chunky.
Yeah.
Now whether that's at like a low amateur level or whether they're sort of in the transition from like a heavyweight to super heavyweight. But again, for me in that scenario, the it's not always about the weight. Yes, of course we want to be as big as we can, but the structure plays a part. There's no point forcing weight on that's then going to sort of almost imbalance a physique. I've seen guys win super heavy classes that just in the range coming from heavyweight and beating guys 20, 30 kilos heavier than them. And I'm sure you've probably seen that as well. It's more about, and it's the same when you come down in a prep. If you're coming back down and you're on the cusp of right going into a heavyweight or you're going into a super heavy class, why force a physique into a heavyweight when potentially you're going to sort of ruin that physique? Coming at the lower end of the supers, the physique's going to look better, and you'll probably stand a better chance of beating supers against you. Rather than going into a very good heavies class, suffering your physique just because you feel that you're going to be the biggest in that class. See it a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so let's first of all assess how do you count your macros, because there are some guys who are counting the protein, for example, from all the sources like pasta, rice, and stuff like that, and there's a guys who are counting only from the direct sources, so
Yeah,
like meats,
yeah.
dairy, whey isolates, fish, and stuff like that. So how do you count them?
So I do overall, but I then look at the actual content from direct protein sources. So if I'm running someone at, say, for yourself, someone like yourself, I would probably have in the range of maybe 350 to 400 potentially, but that would be trace. But then I'm like, right, okay, where am I seeing the majority of the protein from? Is there a lot of carbohydrate sources in there that is pushing that protein sources up? So again, I'm breaking that down still and still analyzing the actual food sources that we're utilizing at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So if we have the counting macros set, so how do you like to keep your protein in a range like per grams for kilos?
Probably. So, like I said, for someone like everybody is different because I've got guys that will grow on 300 and would need 300 your size, and I can't push more than that because of their GI.
Yeah.
So again, it's understanding what someone can actually physically take. I've had guys that are 120 plus kilos running 500 grams of protein and run it well, but they function better at 400 grams. So it's again, everybody's. I don't really use a calculation as such. It's more so just trying to push what we need to create that protein synthesis. Obviously, still being stimulated by the anabolics, but you're still in a position where you're muscle building. Okay, so we have to respect that. I'm a firm believer of pushing protein. Protein in the
Yeah.
building blocks. I know Milos used to scream at running 500 grams easy, or 600 grams. I don't push that much, but I've had guys at 500, but I've pulled them down because and from experience, they function better from a GI perspective and actually feel better with that protein. And these are big guys, like 120, 130 kilo guys, you know,
Yeah.
from a perspective of smaller range. Again, it's sort of like I probably wouldn't go below 300 with unless they're natural.
Okay. So around 3 grams per kilo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how about the carbs and fats? Do you believe that you should keep your fats as low as possible and bump it up the carbs as much as possible, or do you like to keep it more like a balance? Because I asking just because the European coaches tends to keep the fats lower, and
Yeah.
if you look at the diets from the coaches in the USA, for example, they like to keep the fats really high, to be honest, for our
Yeah. No, I
bodybuilders.
see the same because I get pull clients in from everywhere, and you see the diets, and there's such a same with PD protocols. Every sort of country has their own sort of continent has their own sort of setup as such. But yeah, I do notice that from European coaches, you tend to see fats maybe around the 40-50 mark. From in America, I see clients that run like maybe 100, 120, 130s. I like to keep it around about the 60, 70. What I like to do post prep is push the fats in, okay, to help with hormone rebalancing and just trying to get some sort of regeneration there. And then as I'm pushing food, I don't tend to really push much from the fats at that point because the fat levels have already been set. Does that make sense? So then it's then
Yeah.
pushing the carbohydrate values up.
Yeah, but you're counting your fats from you say
Right.
60 to 70, but trace
Yeah, and then
also.
but then obviously as you rise, that's going to bring the value of your fats up as well as you push.
Yeah.
If you're pushing a little bit more protein, if you're pushing a little bit more carbohydrates, that trace total fats is going to hit maybe 80. I wouldn't necessarily put someone anywhere near 100 unless they're running really high carbohydrates and good amount of protein, you know.
Okay. So not a lot of additional fats, you say.
No, 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 no. So like
Okay.
for example, on a standard diet, maybe I don't know, 30, 40 grams of nut butter, 5 to 10 grams of olive oil, couple of eggs.
Throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. 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 So yeah, okay. I'm asking just because for example, I don't believe in high fats for the bodybuilders, just because we are obviously using PEDs, so we are actually not need the fats to create the hormonal balance and stuff like that because we just provided the hormonal balance by
Yeah,
ourselves. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, and in the USA they are still using a lot of fats. You see the guys putting like a uh,
Olive oil, Neil.
1 to 2 tablespoons, so 10 to 20 grams of olive oil throughout the day to each and every meal. So that's crazy for me. Yeah. So do you like to keep your guys on a some sort of like a carb cycling, for example, like a it is and it isn't like a carb cycling. It's because I what I mean by carb cycling, I mean like training and non-training days diets.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
like to use something like that, or you keep the calories?
No, no, no. So definitely a training and a non-training day. I always do that. And what I potentially do with some of my athletes is then, for example, if they're lagging in the lower, I'll give them a leg day plan as well. So they'll have training day, non-training day, and then leg training day plan. So we're pushing more carbohydrates through that day. I may drop protein a little bit on those days just to help the GI, but push the carbohydrates up. I may then push insulin up a little bit more on those days, may push growth hormone up on those days, all in correlation with the muscle group that we're trying to push up. And I've done that quite a lot actually, is give them specific nutrition days for certain muscle groups. Again, just trying to get the most out of these. And I see a good return on it. So it's something that I sort of keep in.
So for the guys who has only like training and non-training days, do you like to lower the calories a lot and bump it up a fats on those days
Not really. It's more so just carbohydrate pull down. It's just a calorie drop from carbohydrates. And
okay,
typically, you could probably say on out again, depending on the calorie range, because obviously, if you're running at 3,000, 4,000, then you got guys that are running 7,000, 8,000. The differential between the 2 days will be bigger. So, for example, it could be 8,000 on training day and 7,000 on non-training day, or it could be 4,000 on training day and 3,500 on non-training day. Again, because of the calorie range, the differential. I like to keep the differential bigger as the calories go up.
yeah.
Again, to try on that rest day, try and clear a little bit of GI space. Just give the give the dietary track a little bit of a break.
Okay, but from what you say, it's not a huge difference. For example, if I have like an 800 grams of carbs on the training days, probably I have like a 600 grams of carbs
Yeah,
to 550 on a non-training. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
okay, okay, okay. So not a huge difference. Most likely it's be like get rid of the intra shake.
yeah. It's your shake, and then if you're running, say, like additional sugars and additional like maybe cereal bars or something like that, pull them out, and basically you just go whole foods on the non-training day.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. So, this is more like questions for those guys who are maybe managing their off season by themselves. What are the biggest diet mistakes athlete can make in the off season, in your opinion?
Chasing scale weight, simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, most common. Yeah, those hitting those 300 pounds.
That's it. That's it. And don't get me wrong. There's a reason why we track weight at the end of the day. It's a progress marker. But if you're seeing kilo to kilo, 2 kilos a week, for consistent weeks, you're gonna run into a problem very soon. Yeah, argument that coming off the back end of a prep, you're gonna naturally see that. But when you're in the top end, the back end of that phase, you shouldn't be chasing the numbers for sure. You've got to let the body catch up with itself. And even if you're stagnant for a couple of weeks, you're probably going to see that the body's actually going to get a little bit tighter by not shifting anything. But again, what I try to do with my athletes is try not to get them to focus on that, but focus more so on the other variables. So where's your good performance? Where's your recovery? How's your sleep? Because these are the things that are essentially going to be the building blocks to allow muscle growth to occur. You know, anyone can put weight on anybody at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah. So, how about the cheat meals during the off seasons? Do you like to incorporate them
Yep.
they are scheduled, or most like you says, for example, eat whatever you like on a meal six, for example, once a week.
Yeah, so it would be potentially last meal. Standardization is last meal once a week. I always say the last meal because you know yourself, if you put it in
Yeah,
meal five, you ain't getting meal six in. So that's the standard sort of approach. Then you've got the guys, and I'm like, right, okay. No, I said about having the additional calories on maybe a leg day. What I may do with some individuals is right, okay, night before your leg day, we'll structure that off-plan meal and then maybe factor in another one later in the week. So we're pushing in two off-plan meals. So again, very specific to an individual. I've got guys that can quite happily have two off-plan meals, stay in condition, have no issues with GI, and that's one of the big things in an off season is that you put an off-plan meal in, which is fine, but then you know yourself that if you have a big fat pizza and a cheesecake, you know,
yeah,
digestion could be screwed for the next day. You're not getting all your calories in, it becomes counterproductive. So, you know, I try and say to my guys, stick with what you know, have an off plan. Like, and sometimes I have to force my guys to have an off plan, you know, because they're so regiment, which is cool, you know. But I like to incorporate it as sort of pretty much a one, and I'm very much in a scenario in a prep. You know, it's something that I do incorporate when it's required. It's not a given, but I do feel it's a tool that you can utilize. And then what I tend to do is then transition that refeeding into the fact that okay, now we go into clean carb refeeding as we get closer to the show. So it's certainly something that I incorporate all year round.
but do you give your guys some sort of restriction? For example, try to shoot around 12 to 1500 calories or something
In
like
a, in
that.
a, in a prep scenario, I'll pretty much tell them what to eat. I'll say, right, go to the burger
But
joint.
but in the off season, we are talking about this. No? Do,
No,
do you have guys who get way overboard?
not really. No, no. You see a spike and then it drops off very quickly. You know, like I
Yeah.
said, by that point, there's only so much you can consume without feeling too uncomfortable. You know, they're eating a lot through the day. Again, this is why I have it as a last meal. You're getting five big meals in before that last meal.
Yeah.
Normally, a couple of burgers, a big plate of fries, and a dessert in. That's ample enough for a big thing of sushi. You know.
Yeah. Okay, okay. So, what about the mini cats during the off season? Because they are more and more popular. Maybe more. I see that in the Europe than in the USA's. But do you like to use them? And if you use the mini cats, what are the reasoning of the mini cats mostly?
I would say that I don't really use them. You know that all it is for me is time wasted in an off season, basically. You know, like if you can keep things steady, you know, as you're pushing, there may be a point where right, we're getting to the top of the push phase, and we're like, okay, we're starting to see some pushback in regards to where the body is, appetite's dropping, conditions not where I want it to be. It's like, right, okay, we've got a window where we're going to be dropping down into a health phase. We can use this window, we can pull back on calories, reset appetite because we're not effectively in a program push phase. So we've got a few weeks here where essentially what we all we want to do is hold the muscle tissue that you've recruited. If you go into a slight deficit, you're not going to lose that muscle tissue. If we introduce a little bit more higher intensity cardio just to get the heart back into a healthy place, get appetite going, I tend to utilize that window more so. And certainly I wouldn't be in a position where I'm like, okay, I need to drive down body fat to an extreme. There may be one or two cases where I've done that in the past where, insulin sensitivity's been screwed or, when I've picked up a client, and I'm like, okay, and that's where I tend to see it the majority of the time where the only time really where I would use it is right. I've got a client who's come to me who's carrying excess body fat. They're like, right, okay, I want to grow. I'm like, we're not in a position to grow. We need to pull that back before we go because you're not in a sensitive position to. If we push you now, it's going to be like a snowball effect. All you're going to be doing is accumulating muscle and accumulating body fat at the same time, which is then going to be a detriment starting point for prep. So it's like, right, okay, come to me now. We've got a window of maybe 12 weeks. We can hit it quite aggressively. It's not a prep scenario. We still have probably an off-plan meal a week, but we drive down that level of body fat. I've got a couple of guys that I'm doing it with at the moment, just to put them in a really good position then to be like, okay, now we can push up. Their timeline of what they thought they may be stepping on stage has shifted, but it's going to give them a better starting point for prep when that comes around.
Yeah, understandable. Okay, so you mentioned cardio. Do you like to have your guys doing the cardio throughout the whole off season, or do you think that it's a waste of calories or just additional stress for your body and stuff like that?
To be honest, mate, the majority of guys like to do cardio, and I like to put cardio in. I do have a couple of guys that are very active in their job, which you have to take into consideration. They're hitting 15, 20K through their manual job a day. So it's like it becomes then detrimental to add any more cardio to that because they can't restrict that.
Yeah, of course.
You just can't go into work today. Sorry, mate. I've done too many steps. So that's something that I will take into consideration. I'm not a believer of pushing steps really high, which seems to be the new trend as well. If I've got a guy in an off season, I can say, right, okay, if I know that, if I know, sorry, my doorbell's doing it. If I know they're pretty stagnant like myself, like I can sit here all day and literally probably do up 3 to 4 thousand steps. The the goal would be right, okay, let's hit 10,000 steps. It's not strenuous. Just putting a little bit of output in, a couple of extra walks throughout the day. It's probably going to help with digestion. I've got guys that potentially will have a cardio equipment at home, which then becomes handy because I can say, right, jump on that for 20 minutes, low intensity, rather than focusing on steps. For the guys that don't have again, I'm quite realistic. If they've got to travel 30, 40 minutes to go
Yeah,
and do
of course.
cardio in the off season and lose 30 minutes in bed, it's like, why would you do that? If they've got cardio at home, they can stay in bed, get up and do their cardio, or I'm like, right, okay, do it post workout, or I set you a step goal. But that step goal certainly wouldn't be anywhere ridiculous.
So you say step goal either or, yes? So either
Either
they
or,
do the cardio or they do sets steps for the days. So
majority of time in the off season, yes. Yeah.
you are not like to combine them. For example, do at least 5 to 6 K of steps a day, and then on top 20 minutes of fasted cardio a day or something like that.
I would do in a prep scenario for sure,
Okay.
but not in an off season. It'd be like I could hit my phone's now ringing. Yeah, in an off season scenario, it would be pretty much right. There's your step goal, hit it, or um, be in a position where do 20, 30 minutes of low intensity cardio.
Yeah, of
If
course, of
if
course.
we're going into that health phase, I'm like, you know what, we want to sort of try and bring you into get that cardiac function going. I'm like, okay, twice a week, put in some hit, and just throw it in there because we know that's only going to help long term with the performance in the gym.
Okay. So, can we speak a little bit about the PEDs, or you don't like to touch the
Yeah, yeah.
subject?
Fine.
Can we? Okay, so PEDs in the off season. What are the best compounds for building mass in the off season, in your opinion?
In my opinion, um, obviously test base. Um, and again, it all goes down to the individual. If we're looking at labs and you've got scope to push EQ, I like using EQ. Um, well, I probably wouldn't use EQ. I wouldn't use EQ, MPP, Trend, Deca, anything like that until a little bit later down the line. I like to set the basis and titrate up, trying to, again, not using all your tools at once. So a good base of test and primo um, is a good starting point. And again, looking at the ratio, looking at lab works of where you push your testosterone and your primo levels. Again, because you want to create an environment which is going to promote growth. So we're not smashing primo at 2 gram and running test at like 500. So it's looking at the level in which you can run them together. I would then see the response from that over a few weeks. Obviously, analyzing bloods at some point and be like, okay, now we can introduce EQ potentially, maybe drop down the primo. Um, If an individual is not keen on volume and they are taking a lot, I may split the primo with mast. Again, I'm realistic with the amount of jab sites and scarring that's taken into consideration. So I've got quite a lot of guys that will do 50-50. You got to take into the account the legitimacy of the primo as well.
Yeah.
Um, Again, and this is why I don't run primo in prep. I'd pretty much just use master on a test as a starting point for prep, and then add everything else in. But from an off-season perspective, test primo and then add another compound in when we need to. So we're looking at maybe EQ, MPP, trend. Again, everybody's response is different. I get feedback from a client and say, right, okay, I can't run trend. I'm no good on 19 NORs. My RBC's in a good range. I'm like, right, let's put EQ in. Let's push some EQ in. I may pull primo down a little bit and just sort of manipulate the stack at that point. Push test up a little bit.
Okay, so but let's take a ideal scenario. So, for example, man can manage a lot of testosterone without any issues when it comes to aromatization and stuff like that. Or the gyno glands are removed, so
Yeah.
they
So
have
like
like and
the
no additional. You sorry for interrupting you. Do you like to keep the testosterone as high as it's possible, and then add like a primal or any anabolic into that, or do you believe in something like I don't know, high anabolic and low test cycles?
so again, perfect scenario. I like to push testosterone myself. I had gyno and I could not push any more than 400 without that. I can run TRT plus at 300 and it still gets flared. If I run primo and test at 400, it still gets aggravated. So I have to run an AI, which I don't really want to do. I'm not one of these guys that's like, okay, let's push the test up, but then add in an AI. If needed, there'll be an AI in, but it's the last resort for me. So it's more about managing the dosage in between the test and primo. Ideal scenario, I don't know, grammar test, grammar primo, pretty much 100, and then as
Yeah.
you transition into a prep scenario, you can do that, in my opinion, with DHT and test. So you probably switch to primo for master on, then obviously bring down your testosterone, push the master on up a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's the perfect ideal scenario, should we say.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I've always asking about the perfect scenario because there's obviously gonna be a huge difference between the person to person, but we like to operate on the ideal scenario just because there's probably a little bit of more like perspective for the people because probably testosterone gonna build the majority of your muscle. So
Yeah.
for people who are thinking, I can easily switch
To the
the
grammar.
testosterone to a masteron because I have 10 bottles of masteron from previous contest prep, so I'm gonna use it rather than use testosterone or something like that because saw that so and so use conjunction like this, and that's probably gonna be the same, and that's not gonna be the same.
Testosterone's the building blocks at the end of the day, but then what you run with it is almost like the additional controlling factor. And this is why you don't see a lot of people. Well, I don't have a lot of people running a gram of testosterone because they're not in an ideal scenario. So,
Yeah.
the normal range anywhere between, I don't know, 400, 700 is a standardized almost range. And then DHT would be maybe slightly higher, Master Primo or combo would be slightly higher, just ensuring that we've got that good level of E2 conversion, so we don't need an AI. And then what we're doing is then potentially ideal scenario, pushing some trend for 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. I like to use trend in an off season. It works well if it's tolerable.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing that surprised me, to be honest, because this is a compound like every other. So, GH in the off season, do you believe that more is more, or you like? Of course, we are getting the perfect scenario in the consideration, so not like uh, I can move my arms because they are they are numb,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna run 30 IUs. But let's say for a guy it's he using a 10 IU without any problems,
Mhm.
and you try to bump it up to 12 and they have no problem, 15, no problem, do you still run 10 or you believe that 15 is going to be better?
You have to take into consideration, obviously, insulin sensitivity, which is probably going to get screwed if you continue pushing and pushing. So then it's like, okay, do you then counteract that by then pushing? You're then almost getting blinkered and then pushing more insulin, which then is going to have a whole issue on itself. So
Yes.
if you're running well and seeing progress at 10, keep it at 10. Again, if it's not broke, we don't need to fix it at the end of the day. There may be other tools that we can add in, like IGF or Increlex, if you're in the position to do so.
Yeah.
So there's other avenues rather than just pushing and pushing the growth hormone. Like again, it's the scenario. If it's not broke, don't fix it. From a growth hormone perspective, if it's screwing insulin sensitivity, that's why I like to pull it down through health phases to have a little bit of a reset. So you pulling the androgens down, pulling the growth hormone down, have a little bit of a reset, see where blood sugars are sort of sitting at, and then we can push back up again and seeing the response from previous of where we can sort of set the standard. Again, everybody's different. It's again
Of course.
analyzing everything, that making sure you've got all the data there that you can then respond to, rather than just sticking your finger in the air and guess. You know,
But you are not those coaches who says like 3 IUs and no more, no more because you're gonna
I'll push
I
it.
don't
The
know
big
what.
thing is that what I'll say to my guys is, right, I want to push this. Can you afford to push it?
Yeah,
That's my conversation normally, and it's like anything with drugs involved. I'm like, right, this is what I want to introduce. One, how do you feel on it? Have you used it before? Do you know your tolerable range? Are you happy for me to introduce it? Because it's your body at the end of the day.
of
I'm respectful
course.
of that. So it's more about, right, okay, I want to put this in. Are you happy for me to say, let's go? So.
Yeah, I think that once there will be a term as much as you afford.
Yeah.
But in today's era, the GH is so cheap
Yeah.
in correlation to the 10, 15 years ago that
Mhm.
this term is no longer like
Yeah. Yeah.
actual, just because the
Quite a lot of athletes are sponsored anyway.
yeah, and they probably easily afford to run 50
Yeah.
IU a day
Yeah. Yeah.
and not even feel the difference in their pocket.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is why it's not no longer current, to be honest, to this day of age. But back in the days, some guys can afford to run 3 IUs. So 6 IUs was something like crazy amount. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Yeah,
thing is, I don't know about you, but like the more there's some very good generic brands that are being pushed around at the moment, which is fantastic because then again it makes it more affordable
yeah,
and more beneficial.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. For example, the brand that's sponsoring me have a great GH. You can use my code.
which was that?
This Oxytropin,
Okay, yeah,
you know that?
yeah,
Yeah, that's a very good brand, and I think that the majority of UK guys also run it just because it's like to all Europe
yeah. Yeah,
available. Yeah.
we use I put the Biolab ones out to my
Yeah, that's also pretty well known, and it's also a Polish brand.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we know that they're both. We've seen the tests on them. We know that they're good. There's some good. There's a couple of good undergrounds in the UK. And to be fair, I've actually pushed my guys towards that more so than pharma because more pharma is getting replicated now, more and more of it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a shame, but it's why take the risk when we've got the paper, knowing that these generic ones are pretty good.
I believe that at the end of the day, as long as the amount of amino acids are correct in this GH, the GH is GH. So doesn't really matter if you take it from the pharmacy or underground lab, as long as you know that it's that it is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and most of the like really good underground labs are testing
yeah,
it
exactly.
pretty often. So yeah,
The thing
so
is
there is
that
no
because
worry.
because they're so much advertised now, like, why would they want to try and undercut? You know, all they want to do is make good business. So
Yeah,
it's in nature to be right. Okay, we need to make this good because if we sell it, we're going to sell more of it.
of
So
course.
it
Yeah,
doesn't make sense to.
yeah. So, what about the insulin in the off season? Do you like to use them, and what kind of insulin? Do you run only like a short-acting insulin, or you use basal as well?
Use both. Use both. I'm probably again not using all your tools at once. If you can just get away with running basal and see where you're sitting at that, we run that. Again, I've got guys that push a lot of carbohydrates. You're talking 1,000, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 grams of
Lewis,
carb.
for example.
Lewis, for example.
He's-
But thing is though, he can't run fast acting because he responds bad to it. So
yeah,
we just run a good level of basal, you know, and that keeps him in a good range.
yeah, his insulin sensitivity might be crazy
Yeah,
because he has those issues, yes, with his metabolism. So
he's
so
got
this is
crazy
what this is
metabolism.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes I am a little bit like mm, jealous, let's say like that. And sometimes I don't because I'm more like a foodie guy, so I'm always hungry, even on the off season. So
yeah,
I can eat really, but
yeah.
I've never been in a place that I have to eat 8,000 calories. So this is probably I'm saying that because after a couple of weeks of eating day by day 7 to 8,000 calories, you're starting to get sick of it.
Yeah, we used to push about 10 a day,
Oh
but
my
we
God.
over the years we've been able to control that and bring its actual food volume down, which has certainly helped his midsection, you know, the and really sort of just look at overall food sources, food volume, digestion, you know, and worked really hard on that because he's got a thick physique, you know, and we've actually made his waist smaller from season to season by doing that. And everyone's like, well, how do you do that? It's not actually making his frame smaller, it's just the actual volume through his midsection because we're able to utilize different food sources now, you know, and really sort of fine tune that. And that's something that takes a lot of time over. You can't just, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It's
Yeah,
something
of
that,
course, of course. To be honest, Lewis is the one of the bodybuilders I'm looking the most, probably one of my favorite right now, because I'm obviously I'm much smaller than him, but I'm also 5'7",
yeah.
and I have a problem with quite a wide waist. So this is why I basically love his physique because I've always liked the mass monsters the most. For
It's bodybuilding, you know, that for me is bodybuilding,
of course,
yeah, there's two sort of roads of bodybuilding, should we say, the aesthetics and the mass monsters, and I love them both. Lewis has built his physique off training like a freaking animal for
yeah.
years and eating a shit ton of food. You know, the man has probably never broken his diet in 20 years. You know, I remember one year he was in prep, I had to tell him to have his Christmas dinner. It's like 12 weeks out, like, bro, go and have your Christmas dinner with your family, you know. The man is such a so and every bodybuilders are regimental, but like he is consistent with his food and his training and built his physique off that, you know. We only really pushed insulin and growth after he won his pro card, you know, and you know the physique and realistically we've only just started to push his total androgen load as well, you know.
Yeah,
It's just taking it bit by bit. We're not sort of in a position where okay, we're running out of tools here. We've got still plenty of
yeah.
yeah.
But for guys like Lewis, using an insulin is not actually enhancing; it's preventing.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
be honest, because you cannot eat 10,000 calories without insulin and stay healthy. You just can't. Your pancreas will burn out in a weeks.
That's what I don't understand. There are some European coaches that don't utilize insulin.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that because yeah, that controlled properly, everyone says you're going to get insulin gut. You're not going to get insulin gut. You know, all you
Uh,
do is stop yourself from getting diabetes. You know, it's one of those things that it's going to be more healthier because the body has to somehow try and incorporate all those carbohydrates. You know, it seems logical to apply this, and I don't understand why people tend not to run insulin, whether it's because they don't want to manage it, they don't
I
want to.
think I think it's more like a social media trend right now to says that you are not using insulin because most of the guys, to be honest, are afraid of using insulin. And I don't know why, because the insulin is the safest drug in the bodybuilding you can even use. Because if you are not an idiot, to be honest, and you're controlling your blood sugar, there's basically no side effects from insulin.
Yeah.
Zero. So this is like a safest drug in the bodybuilding. And some guys are willing to push tren in 100,000 milligrams, but they are afraid of 5-IU of Novorapid, of Humalog after the training because they are afraid that they're gonna die or something. So this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, social media plays a part for that, I think.
Of course, of course. I think that this is more like a marketing because I just can't believe that guys like some, I'm not gonna name the names, but some of the really known coaches are not utilizing
Yeah.
insulin because it's such a powerful tool to use that I just can't believe that. I just can't.
I sort of I had this conversation with a guy, was it last week in Dubai? It's whether is it another factor that they've got on their monitor, because they're then applying it. I don't know. Is it that, or is it just the fact that they just want to try and promote it that they don't like to use insulin?
I think it's the second one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last three questions. How high you like to keep the estrogen during the off season? Because there are some coaches who believes in a ratio between the testosterone and estrogen. So they think that you have to be at least on the twice as the range of the estrogen just because your test is, I don't know, seven times the norm or something like that.
I'm again going down to how I explained sort of the setup in regards to the PEDs. Creating a E2 primed environment is going to promote growth to a certain degree. You obviously have to take into consideration side effects. As long as I'm, if I'm looking at the bloods and I see that you're in a super physiological range, you know, in a reasonable super physiological, and you're not shooting way past that mark. Someone actually asked me, "Oh, what's the number you're looking for?" I said, "There's no number. I just want to have, I just want to have a look at your blood and see where you're sitting in regards to what testosterone, how much testosterone you're taking, and what other drugs you're taking, just so I can the realms of where your E2 is. An E2 primed environment is going to come proof at the end of the day. Okay, it's just again, So for me, it's keep. I'm someone who would keep someone in a primed E2 environment. Put it that way, shall we say? I don't want to bring that down. I don't want to almost bring it into a physiological range. I'd rather see it in a super physiological range, but not.
So a little bit above the norm will be great. So like for example, let's say it's 10 to 34, the norm, and you like to keep it around the 60, 70 max.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. So do you use, obviously you partially answered the question already, but do you like to use the AI and if so, what kind of AI is your go-to?
So ideally, in an off season, you're not using an AI. You've got control of the PDs. But in scenarios where you've got a very sensitive individual, someone like myself, I've got guys that I can't push past 300, 400. If I do, then I have to introduce an AI. And that's regardless of what level the DHT is at. So aromas in. It depends on whether they what they've got already. Is it sort of something that we can do we have to man manage first to bring down to then push, or is it something that we have to man manage as we push up? So again, just looking at the scenario, you've got raloxifene, aromas in, a couple that I would probably use initially to help bring it. If there's something present, try and bring it down with that before going into the realms of using something like Arimidex, which in my opinion works fantastic, but is a little bit more aggressive on the lipid profile. So again, just using the right drug at the right time.
Okay, so you also like to use a serum. rather
Yeah,
than AI.
yeah,
Okay, okay,
yeah.
okay.
If
Because you
it's
mentioned
required.
loratadine, and it's actually a sermon.
Yeah, but
And
yeah, so reluctine I would potentially use for maybe 2 weeks if it was needed to help reduce first. Does that make
okay,
sense?
yeah, of course.
If we're in a position where okay, we're going to be using a little bit more testosterone now, let's use a little bit of an AI. It'd probably be aromazine, at 12.5 every twice a week, maybe every 3 days. Start with, see the response, and then do we bring that down? Some guys don't respond well to aromazine. I don't really respond well to aromazine. I know Arimidex works really well for me. So it's like, do I take the hit rather than pushing my DHT through the roof, which is going to screw my lipid profile anyway? Do I just use a
Yeah,
little bit of Arimidex? So
yeah.
it's everybody's different.
Do you really see the correlation of using AI and a lipid profile disruption? Because I've never saw that on the blood works of my clients. I've only see the screwing of the lipid profile if they get their estrogen too low, just because the very low estrogen is gonna actually lowers your lipid level,
I probably
especially
see it.
HDL.
I probably see it more so when you're pushing primo more so than you are using Arimidex to a certain degree. I do see a
Yeah.
correlation sometimes on blood, not all the time, but it's there, so you can't ignore it. It's gonna again, everybody responds differently, but I see it more so if you're pushing DHTs high, super high. I've had clients come to me that will run 2 to 3 grams of DHT, and their lipid profiles are ridiculously out of position. You know.
Okay. So last question when it comes to the off season, how do you manage the blood pressure of your clients? Do you like to use some sort of blood pressure meds, or maybe trying to stay as natural as possible for as long as you can, for example, introducing more cardio, or I don't know, like a garlic extract and stuff like that?
Yeah, garlic extract's fantastic. That's sort of built into should we say the lipid health supplement range that I would suggest. Cardio, I've already mentioned in an off season, is certainly going to help with blood pressure. There are a couple of supplements. Strom do a product called Systol Max, which is a UK based company that works really well. There's another one. The supplement needs heart stack. The couple of good supplementations that you can use if that's sort of in a position where okay, what do we do? The new phase of using telmisartan, it's been around for ages, but the new phase is everybody sort of seems to use it. I utilize it on my guys. Um, it works. Do you use do we use it as a precautionary measure by putting it in straight away, or do we put it in to help bring down? Again, I think it's client specific. It's very much where are we going to be pushing this athlete? Do we need to put this in from the start before we see blood pressure elevate, or are we getting an athlete that's already got the issues which we can introduce and then start to lower? So there's two scenarios there. So an ARB is certainly going to help, but if you can try and just keep everything with the basics, as naturally as possible. That's the perfect scenario. But when you're 120, 130, 140, I've got guys 150 kilos, like they're big
Of
guys.
course.
So you have to take that into consideration. We have to respect that. And again, it's right. Okay, where's the blood pressure at? Okay, that's one main focus is going to be bringing that down as soon as possible. Is it is it detrimental enough to then stop cycle at that point and bring everything down and run the health phase? That's the things that we got to be looking at. You know, there's no point continuing if this is going to keep skyrocketing just for your own health. We could be week 12, 13, 14 in. We've had a good enough push. Blood pressure's through the roof. We've tried everything. Let's get everything out. Get some more cardio in, pull calories down a little bit, have a little bit of a reset, and then sort of see things from there and manage it moving forward.
Of course. So we finished the off-season part. So let's get into the transition to the prep mode. And it's going to be only two quick questions because the rest are going to be in a second part of the podcast. Yeah, part two. So keep an eye on the channel and definitely gonna do the part two. But you like to do some sort of deload or like a break from the training before the start going into the prep, or you like to go like a cold turkey?
Again, it comes down to the individual. I'm looking at the feedback that they're providing me with. I'm analyzing. It's like, right, okay, if we're good enough to switch through. What I tend to do is map out the fact that, right, okay, you're going to have the new name pre-prep priming phase,
Yeah.
um, where essentially we've pushed to the max in the off season. We've come to the end. We'll have a maybe 4 to 6 week window. Pull drugs down. It's a time to then look at where the physique is. Is it battered? Do we need that break? Okay, if you're good, carry on. But what I will probably do a week before prep is even though an individual feels good, I'm like, right, okay, let's take a little bit of downtime, before we lock it in. Yeah, it's only going to serve you good. Nothing's going to happen within that week. You're going to mentally reset. You want to get back in the gym, and you're going to lock yourself in for that starting point.
Okay. So the second question is health phase or breach before the prep or
Mhm.
going straight into. And what do you mean by health phase? Because I know the guys who are doing a TRT, I know the guys who are doing a PCT, but
Yeah.
that's what
So,
do you
so,
mean by health
so
phase?
so my health phase would technically be a TRT dosage or a TRT plus dosage, but that would just be testosterone. Bridging phase is when I'm using maybe primo, low levels of primo, low levels of testosterone, and that would potentially be that window from off season to prep. Where we've had a good couple of health phases through the off season. We're now in a period where we want to stay in a really good position. We've been running test and primo and maybe another compound. We remove that compound, bring test and primo right down, just use that as a bridging and then pull bloods. Still, you may see some elevation in some markers, but respectfully, you want to see things improving before you start the prep. So there's three scenarios, as you mentioned, before we go into a prep. If the timeline doesn't allow it, if you've taken someone on and you're like, right, okay, the way that we look at the navigation of this setup, we don't have the time to run through the bridging phase, the health phase prior to the prep. We've had that previous. We may have only had like, I don't know, a 12-week push up, and then we're going into a 16-week prep. Looking at from an overall androgen exposure perspective, it's tolerable, so we can sort of almost accumulate that for that timeline. If there's more shows after that, how far into the season does he want to push? So again, it's just gauging that. Ideal perfect scenario is run into a healthy, have a proper clear out, athlete's perfect, blood works are perfect, then start prep. That would be a 4 to 6 week window. If there's scope to bridge, because we know that blood works are good and we can tolerate a slightly elevated TRT plus dosage through that bridging phase, that, in my opinion, is going to be the best scenario.
Okay, understandable. Okay, so I think we are finished for today. I hope that everyone gets at least a decent amount of information when it comes to your approach to the off season and switching into the contest prep. And I hope that those who are wanted to learn really get something out of it, and those who don't probably still not gonna be informed, even if we are gonna to speak for next 5 hours and try to explain everything in a very very small details. So yeah, for everyone who sticks to the end of this podcast, I would really encourage you to subscribe, comment, share, and do everything that needs to get the algorithm going, especially because this is in English and I'm living in Poland. So the algorithm are not
You know,
so
we,
keen for
yeah.
for that. So for everyone who wants to work with you or just checking you out because I don't know, they for some reason don't know you yet, they're gonna find the links in the description down below. And thank you for your time. Have a
No,
great day, man.
it's been a pleasure, mate. Honestly, we finally hooked up. It's been about 3 weeks in the wait, but we managed to hook it up. But looking forward to part two. We'll get that sorted. And thank you guys for listening.
Great. Thank you and see you next time.